This was a serious breach of security at one of Iraq's biggest oil installations. This time, it wasn't one of the pipelines or the oil fields, which is home to foreign investment. It's the biggest refinery in the country, the Beji refinery north of Baghdad. According to officials there, gunmen infiltrated the facility at 4:30 this morning, spraying the place with gunfire after they left as they laid bombs in control rooms. Those bombs set off fires that have caused extensive damage to a large part of the refinery. One engineer was killed by smoke inhalation, another technician killed by gunfire as the gunmen went out shooting. He says they're assessing not only the damage to the refinery, but exactly how this security breach could have happened. The facility is protected by a unit attached to the Ministry of the Interior. He says they are trying to increase confidence among staff who are afraid to come back to work. But in the short term, it will lead to a shortage of gasoline, a shortage of kerosene, and certainly have an impact on the confidence of Iraqis that their government can keep these installations safe.
Let's head back to Europe now. Ireland, which has voted, and it looks like the ruling Fianna Fáil party will be cast out of power. Lauren's got more on that in London. Hi, Lauren.
Hi there. It's Fianna Fáil obviously was the party that presided over Ireland's disastrous fall from economic powerhouse to the brink of bankruptcy, and that saw many of its traditional supporters turn against it. One exit poll indicates that a coalition government is now the most likely outcome. Well, we can now speak to Rory Challens, who's live for us in Dublin. So, Rory, do we now have any clearer picture yet of how the land lies?
Well, Lauren, it's starting to emerge, but it's still early days. There have been about 16 seats declared so far out of 166 in the Irish Parliament called the Dáil. But the exit poll that was released at 8 o'clock this morning GMT, the national share of the vote that is emerging is broadly following the patterns that set out. And that is predicting a huge sea change in Irish politics. It really is turning into quite a remarkable day.
All over Ireland, anger is being counted vote by vote. This election has galvanised a vengeful electorate. Indications are of over 70% turnout across the country.
At this count in the centre of Dublin, 6 different constituencies are being tallied up. And when all the boxes are emptied and the dust settles, Ireland will have had the biggest shake-up of its political landscape since it became an independent state.
The exit polls point to a hammering for the incumbent Fianna Fáil party, just 15.1% of the vote predicted. That's punishment for its role in Ireland's economic demise. Independents are eager to point fingers at the people they feel let the country down.
The people of this country are going to visit punishment on, or have visited punishment on Fianna Fáil for presiding over the most serious economic crisis the country has seen since its foundation, a crisis that resulted from the fact that Fianna Fáil promoted the interests of developers, bankers and a super wealthy elite.
Any country in Europe thinking of going cap in hand to the European Union or the IMF would do well to look at what's happening to Fianna Fáil here.
There will be chills going up and down the spines of various parties around Europe looking at the results and the consequences of taking such a huge and momentous decision.
The predicted winner of this election is Fine Gael, most likely going into a coalition with the Labour Party. They'll have the unenviable task of trying to renegotiate the terms of the EU-IMF bailout, bring unemployment down and implement several years of austerity measures. The Irish people may be getting their revenge, but their pain certainly isn't over yet.
So, Rory, they're expecting a coalition, but they're used to that kind of thing over there, aren't they?
Yes, well, the system of election here is proportional representation, which generally, not always, but does generally lead to coalitions. And the coalition that is looking most likely is one between Fine Gael and the Labour Party. And that is kind of how the Irish people tend to like it. I think they are broadly mistrustful of handing one single party the keys to office and letting them get on with it. But it seems that one party that is probably not going to be a part of that coalition is Fianna Fáil, the former incumbents, and I'm joined by Mary Fitzpatrick, who is a candidate for Fianna Fáil here in Dublin. Now, Mary, it's not turning into a very good day, is it, for your party?
No, it's not. It's the results, although they're not all in and the votes haven't all been counted, it's very disappointing, absolutely. There's no way you can dress it up.
And can you point to reasons for why that is? Were there things that Fianna Fáil did wrong over their last tenure in power?
Look, there are many factors at play in an election, and particularly in an election where we have PR as a process of election. But Fianna Fáil were in power for 14 years. For part of that time, we experienced the greatest economic boom in Western Europe. But we have also, in more recent times, experienced the greatest economic downturn, or at least one of the greatest economic downturns, and certainly the greatest economic downturn for our country in our country's history. That's unavoidable. Whoever was in power was going to obviously take the blame. The mistakes that were made, they were made on Fianna Fáil's watch, and Fianna Fáil was going to get a kicking for it. And it certainly looks like that's what we are getting today.
And so what about going forward from here for your party? It may be some long years in the wilderness. How do you rebuild?
Well, we have to go back to where we originally started. Originally, the reason Fianna Fáil had such broad support in the country was because we were a party for the ordinary person, and our values as a party were values that the ordinary people identified with. Somewhere along the way that was lost. We have to go back to that core original objective as a party, as a centre political movement, a national political movement that is right in the centre. You've Labour, to the left, and Fine Gael to the right. We do need a strong centre political movement, and one that can provide constructive opposition. So we're going to have a big task to do. We'll have to go back to our supporters, listen to them, talk to them, and rebuild. But it will be from the ground up, and we will have to do it constituency by constituency.
Do you think there are any other lessons that parties or governments in Europe can take from Fianna Fáil's fate here, if they may be thinking about flirting with IMF bailouts and involving the EU?
I think the lesson that has to be learned is to try and bring the people along with you. Government is too detached from people. This is the impression that I have, that people felt that they weren't involved in the decision-making process. They didn't understand the reasons behind the decisions that were being made, and I think that was a failure of communication. I think if governments want to bring their people with them and continue to enjoy their support, they have to communicate with them and bring them along. Mary, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us. So the polls are pointing to a drubbing for Fianna Fáil and a coalition government coming in, probably Fine Gael and the Labour Party, but it's going to be a long night of counting here and a long night of announcements being made. We probably won't know the exact result until early Sunday morning.
And plenty of horse trading to go, I should imagine. Thanks very much indeed. Rory Challen's there live for us in Dublin. Reports from France say the country's Foreign Minister, Michel Alliomarie, will offer to resign on Sunday. Alliomarie has taken a public battering since taking a holiday to Tunisia during the country's popular uprising. She flew there in a plane belonging to a businessman with alleged ties to ousted President Ben Ali. And some news breaking in the last few minutes. The British government says it has temporarily closed down its embassy in Libya. The last flight chartered by the British Foreign Ministry has left Tripoli, leaving just one consular official behind. And officials say that the warship HMS Cumberland will return to the city of Benghazi on Sunday to collect any remaining British nationals. That's all from me for the moment. Go back to Doha for you now.
Looking at news from New Zealand now, where engineers and officials say at least a third of the buildings in central Christchurch will simply have to be demolished and rebuilt after Tuesday's earthquake. 145 people are now known to have died, but more than 200 are still missing. This report from Andrew Thomas on how the city is coping.
What the earthquake didn't pull down, machines now razed to the ground. This was Brent Smith's bed and breakfast.
There's the saying, you don't know whether to laugh or cry. I mean, I haven't stopped shaking since they started, and it's just history, you know, it's history gone.
The house was 155 years old. It was gone in an hour and a half. This is just one of many hundreds of buildings that will have to be demolished over the next weeks and months. In the city centre, 1 in 3 buildings assessed so far has been found to be structurally unsound. The precariousness of so many buildings makes the work of the rescue and body recovery teams that much harder, as aftershocks continue to bring masonry down. In the suburbs, different problems. One, silt. When the quake hit in a process called liquefaction, Muddy water bubbled up through the ground. This is what it's left behind. Many suburbs still have no power nor water, so volunteers 30 kilometres from Christchurch have started a production line of hot food. A local helicopter company then flies in to pick it up.
As of yesterday, we flew in 12,000 kgs of hot food, hot meals into some of the poorest and hardest hit suburbs of Christchurch.
This is where the meals end up. When the residents of Burwood hear the rotor blades, they flock.
We had grilled cheese sandwiches on the barbecue the first night, so this is much better.
Because you can't store food with no refrigeration, it's, this is a good proper meal.
Streets can be cleaned, power will return, but buildings and people in Christchurch are gone forever. The city will never be what it was before. Andrew Thomas, AlJazeera, Christchurch.
All right, let's talk sport with Rahul. Great game at the World Cup, Cricket World Cup.
Yeah, fantastic. 2 in a row. We've got an even bigger match coming up tomorrow. More on that in a minute. But Pakistan have made it 2 wins from 2 in the Cricket World Cup. They beat co-host Sri Lanka. And as I said, a wonderful game in Colombo. Pakistan chose to bat in this one first. And after some early blows from Mohammad Hafiz, the former Test skipper Yunus Khan and the current Test skipper Misbah-ul-Haq both hit half-centuries as Pakistan made a formidable 277 for 7 off their 50 overs. Well, Dilshan gave the Sri Lankans their customary fast start with 41. But then Shahid Afridi, who's more of a bowler than a batsman these days, turned the game Pakistan's way. Veteran quick Shoaib Akhtar then took the vital wicket of Jawardner, and with the run rate going up, Sri Lanka's skipper Kumar Sangakkara tried to up the pace before Afridi had him caught for 49 to claim his 300th one-day international wicket. And when the top scorer Kamara Silva was stumped for 57, Sri Lanka's hopes went with him. Pakistan win by 11 runs. Well, the group match all of India seems to be waiting for. We'll see the host nation taking on England. Sunday's game has been hit by a series of organisational problems in the lead-up, with fans complaining tickets haven't been distributed fairly. Andy Richardson reports.
It's the marquee fixture of cricket's World Cup group stage, England versus hosts India in Bengaluru. The sort of match every fan wants to see and every player wants to be involved in.
It's going to be a great atmosphere here in Bangalore. And I think it's one of those games that everyone dreams of playing, you know, playing against India in the World Cup on their home turf.
Getting your hands on a ticket for this match hasn't been easy, a situation not helped by the lack of a centralised ticketing system. Instead, here in India, regional cricket associations are put in charge of handing out tickets for their own